Christmas mail-order bride arrived. Single father's kids had already made room at the table. The stagecoach rattled like an old tin can as it crawled across the winter-bitten Montana plains. For 3 long days, Clara Bennett had sat with her hands folded tightly on her lap, her travel bag tucked beneath her feet, and her entire future held inside one folded, weather-softened letter. She read it again now, though she already knew every stroke of ink, every gentle curve in the handwriting. Miss Bennett, I am a widowed father raising 5 children on a ranch in northern Montana. They need a steady hand. Confess I need one too. If your heart longs for family and a home, come. Thomas Avery. Clara touched the words with reverence. No one had written her a letter with such sincerity since her own mother passed years ago. Behind the letter's ink she imagined a man with rough hands, a tired smile, a soul shaped by work and loss. A man who was trying, truly trying, to bring love back into a home weighed down by grief. Was she frightened? Yes. Was she hopeful? Desperately. By the time the coach reached the settlement of Red Elk, dusk had draped itself over the small cluster of shingled roofs. Lanterns glowed behind frosted windows. The air shimmered with drifting snow, soft as ash from a winter fire. The driver jumped down first, opening the door with a grunt. Clara stepped out, boots crunching into the new snow, her cloak fluttering in the wind. The cold sliced deep, but excitement made her breath tremble with warmth. She scanned the small crowd, merchants locking up their stores, ranch hands leaving the saloon, a few travelers shaking snow off their hats. She searched for one face in particular. A man waiting with a nervous expression. A man holding his hat in his hands. A man hoping she would say yes to the life he offered. But no such man stood there. Instead, standing a little off to the side, were 5 children bundled in mismatched winter coats. They stared at Clara with wide, unblinking eyes, as if she were something out of a storybook. The oldest was a tall, serious girl, 14 maybe 15, with dark hair braided tightly down her back. Beside her stood a boy of 11, hands shoved deep into his coat pockets, jaw set with an old man's stubbornness. A younger boy and girl huddled close to each other, shivering but curious. And the 5th, the baby, wobbled on weak little legs, mittened hands reaching for snowflakes. The oldest girl stepped forward. "You're Miss Bennett?" she asked, her voice stiff, rehearsed. Clara blinked, startled. "Yes, I am. And you are?" The girl straightened her back. "I'm Jane Avery." Clara's heart jumped. "Avery?" The girl nodded. "And this is Samuel," she said, pointing to the older boy. "Peter and Emily." The 2 middle children waved timidly. She bent and scooped up the baby. "And this is Rose. She just turned 2. The toddler giggled, face peeking from a knitted red scarf several sizes too big. Clara's confusion deepened. "Your father. He was supposed to meet me. Is he ill? Hurt?" The children exchanged glances, quick, frightened, full of meaning. Jane cleared her throat. "Pa couldn't come." "Why?" Clara pressed gently. Samuel kicked at the snow, his voice barely above a whisper. "Bad weather. Ranch work. Lots of reasons." It wasn't an answer. And they knew it. Clara's breath fogged in front of her. She tightened her cloak around her, trying to gather her thoughts. This was not how a mail-order bride was meant to be greeted. No man. No welcome. No explanation. The coach driver slapped the reins impatiently. "Miss, if you're getting off, your bags are here." Clara turned back to the children. "Your father did send you for me, didn't he?" The younger children looked down. Only Jane held Clara's gaze. "We came to bring you home," she said solemnly. Clara's heartbeat slowed. "Home? Without your father? It isn't proper." Jane's eyes shimmered with something like fear, or longing. "It's Christmas Eve, Miss Bennett." The wind picked up, swirling the snow around their boots. Clara stared at them, 5 small figures standing bravely in the cold, trying to look older than they were. Then Samuel, who had been silent until now, whispered, "There's something you should know, ma'am. But it's better if you see for yourself." Clara felt her breath catch. Something she should see? Something they couldn't say? She looked toward the darkening horizon, toward the idea of a ranch somewhere miles away, holding secrets she hadn't prepared for. She looked back at the children, at Rose reaching for her with sticky mittens, at the worry carved into Jane's young face. Clara exhaled shakily. "Very well," she said softly. "If your father cannot meet me, I'll ride with you to the ranch." A wave of relief washed over the children, too deep, too visible for such a simple agreement. That was the first sign. The first crack in their brave little walls. The first hint that nothing about this journey was what she had imagined. The sleigh bells jingled weakly as the oldest boy hitched the small horse. Jane helped Clara onto the seat. Peter and Emily climbed in beside her, and Jane settled with the reins, looking far older than her years. As they glided away from the settlement, Clara looked back one last time at the warm lights of Red Elk. Then she looked forward. Toward the unknown. Toward the ranch. Toward a family she had not expected to meet. Not like this, not ever. Snow drifted in silver sheets ahead of them. Clara Bennett held the baby close. 5 children held their breath. And Christmas Eve began its quiet, life-altering path. A path that would lead Clara not into the arms of a waiting groom, but into the heart of a family whose world was about to change forever. The sleigh cut a narrow path through the deepening snow, the world shrinking into blue twilight. Frost gathered on the children's scarves. Clara kept little Rose tucked tightly under her cloak, her body blocking the bitter wind. The wilderness was strangely silent. No birds, no distant cattle calls, only the rhythmic jingle of the sleigh bells and the soft huff of the pony pulling them toward the Avery homestead. Clara watched the children as they stared ahead with attention far beyond their years. Samuel's gloved hands were clenched into fists. Jane's eyes were fixed hard on the horizon. Peter and Emily huddled shoulder to shoulder, their small breaths puffing clouds of white. Rose had fallen asleep on Clara's chest, her tiny fist curled against Clara's collar. "Do you children often come into town alone?" Clara finally asked, needing to break the quiet. Jane hesitated. "When we have to," Samuel muttered. "We don't have much choice lately." Clara noticed the way Jane nudged him sharply as if warning him to say no more. No choice for what? What has been happening? A weight settled in Clara's stomach. The homestead finally appeared cresting over a small hill, its silhouette dark against the snowy plains. A large, timber-frame house with a wraparound porch, a barn sagging slightly under the winter's burden, and a corral buried halfway in drifts. But what caught Clara's eye first was the light. Every single window glowed with the warm flicker of candles. Red paper stars hung from the porch beams. A small pine wreath adorned the front door. It was beautiful, painfully beautiful. Too beautiful for a house that felt so desperately alone. As the sleigh approached, the children pulled their coats tighter. None of them moved with the eager relief of children returning home. Instead, they moved with the slow dread of children carrying burdens too big for their shoulders. Clara stepped down first, Rose still asleep against her. The cold struck her in the face, but the warm glow spilling from the windows beckoned like a promise she wasn't sure she believed. Samuel hurried ahead to open the front door. Clara stepped inside. Warm air washed over her, rich with the scent of pine, wood smoke, and something faintly sweet, berry preserves maybe. A fire crackled in a stone hearth at the center of the room. A lopsided Christmas tree leaned toward the window, decorated with bits of dried fruit, paper chains, and strings of popcorn. But the thing that took Clara's breath away was the table. Set for 6. Every plate placed with care. Every cup polished. Every napkin folded neatly. And one empty chair at the head of the table, larger, sturdier, carved with rugged hands. A father's chair. Clara's throat tightened. The children began shedding their coats in silence, except the littlest ones who needed help. Clara laid Rose gently on a sofa and knelt to remove her wet mittens. "Children," Clara began softly, "your home is lovely, truly. But I must insist, where is your father?" A stillness filled the room, thick as winter's smoke. Jane stepped forward. Her bravery flickered, but she forced her chin up. "We don't rightly know any more." Clara's heart stuttered. "What do you mean?" Samuel swallowed hard. "Pa rode to the North Ridge 3 days ago. Said he had to bring back a calf that wandered off." Jane continued, her voice cracking at the edges. "A storm rolled in faster than anyone expected. The drifts were too deep. He didn't come home." Emily sniffed loudly, wiping her nose with her sleeve. "He always comes home." Peter whispered, "We waited." Clara pressed a hand to her chest. "Has anyone gone searching?" Jane nodded. "Mr. Barnes found the tracks of Pa's horse, then they disappeared under the fresh snow." Samuel added, "We ain't got the money to hire men to search longer." Emily clutched Peter's hand tight. "We thought maybe he would come today. It's Christmas Eve." Clara felt tears burning at the back of her eyes. And you came to collect me?" she asked softly. Jane's bravery crumbled. Her eyes shone with a pain too old for her young face. "We didn't know what else to do," she whispered. "Pa said he'd been thinking of sending for help. Someone kind. Someone who could help us." Samuel kicked the floor. "He just never did it. Not yet." Clara's breath trembled. "So you brought me here because Because you needed someone? The youngest boy, Peter, nodded fiercely. We needed a grown-up. Mom. Somebody. Emily's small voice quivered. We needed you. Clara knelt down, pulling them all close. Rose toddled over and crawled into Clara's lap, sensing the tremor in the air. Clara stroked their hair one by one. You precious children, she whispered. You should never have had to face this alone. Jane broke down in tears, silent, shaking sobs she'd held in for days. Nobody knew what to do, she choked. So we cleaned the house. We made the Christmas table. And we prayed you'd come. The realization struck Clara so hard she nearly lost her breath. They had prepared a Christmas feast for a stranger. For someone they hoped would stay. Someone they hoped would save them. Clara pulled Jane tightly into her arms, then Samuel, then the younger ones. When she finally looked up, her own cheeks were wet. Listen to me, she said gently but firmly. Until we know what's become of your father, I will not leave you alone. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. Not Christmas. 5 sets of eyes stared at her, fearful, hopeful, trembling. Clara inhaled and made her promise aloud. You have me now. Whatever comes, you have me. The house exhaled, as if it had been holding its breath for far too long. And for the first time that night, the Avery home felt alive again. Morning broke quietly, as if unsure whether it was welcome. Soft gold light spilled across the snowy yard and filtered through the frosted windows of the Avery home. It touched the worn wooden table, the uneven Christmas tree, the stack of firewood Samuel had carried in the night before, and finally reached the sleeping faces of the children piled on quilts near the hearth. Clara had not slept, not really. Not when 5 children depended on her presence like a lantern in a dark room. She moved through the kitchen gently, letting them rest. She found oats in the cupboard, a jar of honey half crystallized, and a bundle of dried apples tied with string. She set a pot on the stove, warming her hands above the rising steam. Her mind replayed everything from the night before. Their father missing. The haunting quiet in the house. The table set for 6. The empty chair no one dared touch. What am I to these children? A stranger? A miracle? A mistake? She didn't know. But she knew this, she couldn't abandon them. Not now. Not ever. Rose woke first, toddling into the kitchen with hair sticking in every direction and a blanket dragging behind her. She lifted her arms in demand, and Clara scooped her up instantly. Good morning, sweetheart, Clara whispered, pressing a kiss into the little girl's hair. Rose patted Clara's cheek as if confirming she was real. Then she grinned, wide, toothy, innocent. That smile alone could have shattered the hardest heart. One by one the other children woke. Samuel came in rubbing his eyes, his shoulders stiff as though bracing for another day that demanded too much. Jane entered next, already braiding her hair and adjusting the sleeves of her worn dress, stepping into the role of mother she was far too young to play. Peter and Emily stumbled in last, still warm from their quilts, their faces hopeful the way children hope for miracles even when they're too afraid to say so. Clara set the bowls of oatmeal on the table. Merry Christmas, she said gently. The words hung in the air, as fragile as ice crystals. Peter whispered, Feels strange, saying that without Pa. Emily nodded, eyes welling. We didn't open any gifts. Jane put them back under the tree. Clara's heart squeezed. Jane lifted her chin, determined not to cry. We don't celebrate until everyone's home. The table went silent. The only sound was Rose smacking her spoon against the wood. Then Samuel cleared his throat. Miss Bennet, you don't have to stay past today. We understand if you don't want to be here. Clara reached for his hand instantly. Samuel Avery, she said firmly. I'm not leaving. He blinked rapidly as if unused to adults choosing them. The room softened. But something still pressed beneath the surface, something held back, unsaid. Clara could feel it. After breakfast, as the children cleaned the dishes, Clara walked to the parlor where the Christmas tree leaned. She touched the little paper stars, each hand-cut and colored, some edges uneven, no doubt the little one's handiwork. These children had been preparing for someone, she realized. Someone they prayed would walk through that door. And then she saw it. On the mantel, beneath the father's framed photograph, lay a folded piece of paper, familiar in shape and color. Clara froze. Her hand trembled as she lifted it. Her own letter. No, a copy of her letter. But this version was written in a different hand. A clumsy one. Not a grown man's. Not Thomas Avery's. A child's. Her breath hitched. Before she could turn around, she heard a small voice behind her. Miss Bennet? Clara faced them. All 5 children stood there, shoulders tight, eyes wide with fear, as if she'd caught them doing something dreadful. Jane stepped forward first, her fingers twisting in her skirt. "We didn't want to trick you," she whispered. Samuel swallowed hard. "We thought, if we told you, you'd go back on the coach." Peter's chin quivered. "Or that you'd get mad." Emily burst into tears, her little hands covering her face. "Please don't be mad." Clara knelt instantly, gathering Emily close before looking up at the others. "Tell me," Clara said softly. "Tell me the truth." Jane inhaled shakily. "We wrote the letter." Clara's heart stopped. Jane continued, voice trembling but brave. "Pa talked about it sometimes. Said he might send for a motherly woman. Someone gentle. Someone who could help us. Someone who might fill the empty chairs around here." Her voice cracked. "But he never did it. He was always too worried it wouldn't be right." Samuel stepped beside her. "So, we did it for him. For all of us." Peter's voice quivered. "We didn't mean harm. We just needed someone." Emily clung tighter to Clara's dress. "We needed you." Clara felt tears burning through her resolve. 5 children had forged a letter, not to deceive but to survive. Not to trick her but to find hope. Not out of mischief but out of loneliness deep enough to drive them to adult choices. Clara took Jane's face gently in her palms. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered. "You were carrying the weight of your whole family. Too much for a child." Jane finally let go, tears spilling fast. Samuel's lower lip trembled. You ain't angry?" Clara shook her head. "No. Not angry." She looked at each of them, eyes full of fear, hope, longing, and shame. "I'm heartbroken," she whispered. "Heartbroken that you felt so alone you had to pretend to be your father just to get help." The children cried then, quiet, shaking sobs that filled the room with truth. Clara pulled all 5 into her arms, holding them as tightly as she could. "You did what you thought you had to," she murmured into their hair. "I understand. And listen to me carefully." She leaned back, lifting their faces so they could see her clearly. "I'm here now. And I'm not going anywhere." Samuel wiped his nose with his sleeve. "Even though Pa didn't send for you?" "Yes," Clara said without hesitation. Jane whispered, "Why?" Clara's voice softened, breaking on the edges. "Because no child should face Christmas without hope. Because your father is missing and until he is found he would want you safe. And because—" She looked around the room, the tree, the table set for 6, the empty chair. "Because I think God brought me here." The children stared at her as if witnessing a miracle. For the first time since she arrived, Clara felt something shift. Something settling into place inside this house with its cracks and its echoes. The silence that followed wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful. Warm. Full of breath and possibility. The truth was out. And love, unexpected, uninvited but true, had begun to take root. Where Clara finally learns the truth, and the children brace for her reaction. Clara didn't sleep much that night. The bedroom the children had prepared for her was warm and tidy, crocheted blankets, a tiny evergreen branch in a jar, and a neatly folded note in childish handwriting. "Merry Christmas, Miss Clara. We hope you stay." Signed by all 5 kids, complete with doodles. But her thoughts ran wild. Who was this Mr. Holt? Why wasn't he here? Why had he sent for a bride when he had 5 little ones to raise? And why did those children look at her like she was a miracle they were afraid would disappear? Morning comes with answers. The next morning, Clara awoke to the smell of cinnamon and the sound of whispering voices tiptoeing in the hallway. "Don't wake her yet," Emma whispered. "She's tired from traveling," Noah agreed. "But I want to show her my picture," little Caleb protested. She smiled despite her worry. When she stepped out into the kitchen, hair still loosely braided, she found all 5 kids scrambling around trying to make breakfast. Burnt biscuits, lumpy porridge, and one heroic attempt at scrambled eggs. "Good morning," she said gently. 5 heads snapped toward her. "Merry Christmas Eve, Miss Clara. We made breakfast for you." "Mostly," Jonah muttered, staring at the smoking pan. Clara stepped forward and took a spoon from Emma's trembling hand. "May I help?" A sigh of relief swept the whole room. It wasn't the sigh of children being lazy. It was the sigh of children who were overwhelmed and weren't used to having an adult help them. Within minutes, Clara had reorganized the kitchen, salvaged the porridge, and soothed the wounded pride of the biscuits. The children watched her with awe. "You cook like Mama did," Caleb murmured. Clara froze. Emma stiffened immediately. Noah put his arm around Caleb. Ellie looked down at her hands. Clara knelt. "I'd be honored if anything I do reminds you of her," she said softly. Emma blinked hard, trying not to cry. A letter on the mantel. After breakfast the mood lightened. The children showed Clara the barn, the half-frozen creek, Jonah's slingshot collection, and the room they all shared. But something didn't add up. No father appeared. Finally Clara gathered her courage. "Children, where is your father? And why wasn't he at the depot?" The kids exchanged a look, one of those silent conversations siblings have mastered. Emma stepped forward, clutching something to her chest. A folded letter. "We didn't want to tell you last night," she whispered. We thought you might leave." Clara took the letter slowly. "What is this?" "It's from Papa," Noah said quietly. "He told us to give it to you." Clara unfolded it with trembling fingers. The handwriting was strong but tired. "Miss Clara, by the time you receive this letter, the children will already have welcomed you. If you choose to walk away, no one will blame you. I didn't write to the agency to find a wife for myself. I wrote because my children need someone gentle, someone patient, someone who still believes in Christmas. I should be home, but duty called. A ranch hand was injured and the storms have made travel slow. I will return when I can. Elias Holt." Clara closed her eyes. So the father did exist. He just hadn't sent for a bride for himself. He had sent for a partner for his children. Someone to hold the home together. Someone to fill the silence their mother left behind. Someone to give them warmth again. Clara's throat tightened. She looked at the 5 faces staring up at her, hopeful, worried, bracing themselves for heartbreak. "Miss Clara?" Emma whispered. "Are you mad at us?" Clara sank to her knees and opened her arms. The children fell into them like they'd been holding their breath for months. "No," she whispered, voice breaking. "I'm not mad. I'm just honored and a little overwhelmed." Jonah sniffed. Ellie sobbed. Caleb buried his face against her shoulder. Noah tried to pretend he wasn't crying. Emma held on the longest, clutching Clara like she was something precious. When they finally pulled away, Clara wiped her eyes. "Thank you for telling me," she whispered. "I won't leave. Not today. Not on Christmas." Emma clasped her hand. "Will you stay tomorrow too?" Clara hesitated. Then she smiled, soft, warm, uncertain, but real. "I'll stay as long as you need me." The children beamed, relief flooding their faces. And that was the moment Clara realized. She hadn't just answered a mail-order ad. She had walked straight into a family that had already made room for her, long before she arrived. Clara becomes the steady warmth the children have been aching for, and the ranch begins to feel like home again. Clara rose early the next morning. Christmas Eve was inching toward Christmas morning, and for the first time since stepping off the train, her feet felt steady beneath her. The Holt household, however, was already buzzing. She found Emma braiding Ellie's hair in front of the fire. Jonah was trying to hammer a crooked nail into a wooden toy. Caleb was feeding scraps to the half-frozen chickens. And Noah was staring toward the road, watching for a father who hadn't returned yet. Clara stood in the doorway, unseen for a moment, taking it all in. 5 children. 5 hearts trying desperately to be brave. Slowly she stepped forward. "Let's make today special," she said softly. 5 heads lifted. "How?" Jonah asked, skeptical. Clara smiled. "With the one thing every home needs on Christmas Eve." She paused for effect. "A plan." The children exchanged glances, hopeful ones. The gingerbread miracle. The first item on Clara's list was simple. Gingerbread. Not just eating it, baking it. And so, the kitchen came alive. Noah measured flour too fast. Emma caught Ellie sneaking peppermint into the dough. Jonah insisted on making a gingerbread cowboy instead of a cookie. Caleb dumped in cinnamon like he was salting a snowy road. Clara laughed, fixing what she could, letting be what didn't matter. "You're not like the other mail-order brides," Emma said shyly as she helped cut out star shapes. Clara's hands stilled. "You've met others?" Emma nodded. 3 came. They saw Papa wasn't home, and left. She swallowed. "They said they weren't meant to be mothers." Clara's chest tightened. No wonder the children had been terrified she would leave. She reached over, brushing a stray curl from Emma's forehead. "You listen to me," Clara whispered gently. "A woman doesn't have to give birth to children to love them." Emma's eyes shimmered. The dough didn't get any smoother after that, but the children's shoulders did, decorating the house the way Mama used to. After the cookies cooled, Clara asked the children to show her the attic. They hesitated. "It's Mama's things," Noah said quietly. "We don't go up there much." Clara placed a careful hand on his shoulder. "Then we'll go slowly." The trunk in the attic was dusty but not forgotten. Inside were ribbons, hand-stitched ornaments, a crinkled paper angel with one wing bent, and a pine-scented candle burned halfway down. Emma lifted the angel with trembling hands. "Mama made this when she was 11, she whispered. "Papa said she hung it every year." Clara knelt beside her. "Then let's hang it again." One by one the children unwrapped memories. Ellie found a tiny sled ornament. Jonah found a bell with a crack in it. Caleb found a wooden star with his name carved into it. And for the first time since Clara arrived, the house didn't feel cold. Felt, remembered. Together they decorated the tree. Together they hung Mama Holt's angel. Together they lit the old candle. When the flame flickered to life, the children fell silent. "Feels like she's here," Noah whispered. Clara didn't answer. She only took his hand. Sometimes silence was the most respectful prayer. A Christmas table set with hope. By late afternoon, Clara found the dining room empty except for a table with mismatched chairs and a small stack of plates. Emma approached nervously. "We didn't know how to set it," she said. "Papa used to do it." Clara smiled. "Then let me teach you." They worked together. Emma polished silverware. Ellie folded napkins. Jonah lit the lamps. Noah laid out the plates in perfect order, tongue sticking out in concentration. Caleb placed the little gingerbread men at each seat, proudly declaring them table guards. Clara stood back. The room felt warm. Alive. Expectant. Jonah spoke first. "Do you think Papa will be home tonight?" The hope in his voice nearly broke her. Clara forced a smile. "I think fathers who love their children find their way home." It was the truest thing she could offer. A door knock that stopped all breathing. Just as dusk settled over the snow-covered ranch, a knock echoed through the cabin. The children froze. Noah's eyes widened. "Papa?" Clara's heart pounded. They all ran to the door, 5 small bodies and 1 trembling woman. Noah flung it open. But it wasn't their father. It was Sheriff Dawson, snow dusted across his hat, breath visible in the cold. "Evenin', kids." "Miss Clara." The warmth drained from the children's faces. "What's wrong?" Emma whispered. The sheriff removed his hat slowly. "I'm afraid I bring news about your pa." Clara's breath caught. Emma gasped. Jonah's fists clenched. Ellie whimpered. Caleb hid behind Clara's skirt. Noah stepped forward, voice cracking. "Is he alive?" The sheriff hesitated. And that hesitation was worse than any answer. Clara steadied herself. Steadied the children. "Sheriff," she said quietly, "come in and tell us everything." He stepped inside, shutting the door against the howling wind. And Clara braced for the truth that could shatter 5 young hearts. Or bind her to them forever. Fear turns to hope, and a stranger's devotion is revealed on Christmas night. The door closed behind Sheriff Dawson, sealing the cold outside, but an even colder dread settled over the room. The 5 children gathered close to Clara, instinctively seeking her protection. The sheriff removed his gloves, face solemn and apologetic. "I'm sorry to come with heavy news on Christmas Eve," he began, voice low, "but you all deserve the truth." Noah swallowed hard. Jonah's jaw trembled. Emma's fingers clutched Clara's sleeve. Ellie whimpered. Caleb didn't look up. Clara steadied her breath. "Please tell us," she said softly. Sheriff Dawson nodded. "Your pa, Elias Holt, is alive." 5 gasps filled the room. Clara closed her eyes in relief, breath escaping her in a shudder. "But," the sheriff added quietly. The children tensed again. "He's hurt. A father's dangerous journey." Sheriff Dawson sat down, warming his hands by the fire. 3 nights ago, Elias set out to bring home a supply wagon before the blizzard hit. One of his ranch hands broke his leg, and Elias wouldn't leave the man out there alone. Noah nodded fiercely. "That's Papa. He always helps everybody." The sheriff continued. "They got caught in the storm. The wagon slid down an embankment. Elias injured his shoulder bad enough he couldn't pull the man out alone." Emma's eyes filled. "But he did, didn't he?" The sheriff's voice softened. "Your father dragged that man uphill through freezing wind and whiteout snow. Built a fire with numb hands. Kept them both alive. A rancher found them at dawn." Clara pressed a hand to her mouth. This wasn't a man who abandoned his children. This was a man who would die to save someone else, and had nearly done so. "He's in town now," Sheriff Dawson finished, resting at the doctor's office. "Weak but fighting." Ellie's voice trembled. "Is he coming home?" The sheriff hesitated. And that pause carved a hollow space in the room. "He wants to. Desperately. But the doctor says he might not make the trip till the worst of the storm passes. Could be tonight, could be tomorrow." Jonah's fists clenched. "But it's Christmas." The sheriff's shoulders sagged. I know, son. Elias said the same. Clara knelt beside the children. We will hope. And we will be ready for him, whether he arrives tonight or tomorrow. Her voice didn't shake, though her heart did. The children crumble, and Clara holds them together. After the sheriff left, the house felt too quiet. The storm groaned against the windows like some ancient beast trying to enter. Noah stared into the fire, jaw tight. Emma wiped tears with the heel of her hand. Caleb curled on the rug, small and afraid. Jonah paced. Ellie clung to Clara's skirt like it was her only anchor. Clara gathered them all close on the couch, pulling blankets over their shoulders. You listen to me, she said softly, firmly. Your father is alive. And he is fighting his way back to you. Ellie sniffed. How do you know? Clara stroked her hair. Because no man who carries an injured friend through a blizzard would ever give up when his children are waiting. Noah swallowed hard. Miss Clara? Will you stay awake with us? In case he comes? Clara hesitated. She wasn't their mother. She wasn't even their wife, not officially. Just a mail-order bride who arrived to a home held together by children. But in that moment, looking at their trembling faces, something inside her settled. She was theirs now. Whether the father had arrived yet or not. She nodded. I'll stay up all night. The children leaned against her, drawing warmth from her steadiness. She held them until the fire crackled low and their eyelids drooped. A light in the storm. Midnight approached. The wind howled. The cabin groaned. Snow whipped against the windows. Clara wrapped another blanket around Emma and set one more log on the fire. Then, a sound. A faint crunching. Footsteps. Slow, uneven, struggling. Clara's breath caught. She hurried to the window. Through swirling snow, barely visible, a single horse approached the house, exhausted, stumbling, and on its back. A man. Clara's heart thundered. Children, she whispered, urgent but gentle. Wake up. They stirred groggily, rubbing their eyes. What is it? Noah mumbled. Clara's voice trembled. There's someone riding up the road. The children sprang to life instantly, even Caleb. They rushed to the window. And when the dim lantern light outside caught the outline of a broad-shouldered man leaning heavily over a saddle. Emma gasped. Jonah cried out. Caleb shouted, Papa. Ellie's little hands covered her mouth. Noah froze, tears filling his eyes faster than he could wipe them away. Clara opened the door. Snow blasted inside. And through the storm's roar came a hoarse, breaking voice. Kids. Noah didn't wait. He tore across the snow, feet slipping, arms flung wide. Papa. Elias Holt barely slid off the saddle before Noah collided with him, sobbing into his coat. His father staggered but kept his footing, dropping one arm around his boy. The others rushed him, burying him in a tangle of small, desperate hugs. Clara stood at the doorway, tears burning her eyes, watching as a wounded father gathered his children close, fighting for breath, fighting to stand, fighting to get home. Then Elias lifted his weary face. Their eyes met across the swirling snow. And Clara saw everything in that one look. A man who had nearly died trying to get back to his children. A man who had sent for a bride not to replace their mother, but to save their hearts. A man whose life, family, and hope were now tangled with hers. He whispered one word. Clara. And then, staggering forward, he collapsed into the snow. Clara gasped and rushed toward him with the children. Papa. Get him inside. Hurry. Clara dropped to her knees beside him, lifting his head gently as the snow fell around them. Elias? Elias, stay with me. His eyes fluttered. His breath was ragged. But his hand found hers. I came home, he whispered. And Clara knew. Christmas morning brings healing, new beginnings, and a family formed not by blood, but by chosen love. The moment Elias Holt collapsed into the snow, Clara and the children sprang into action. Noah and Jonah tried to lift him under the arms. Emma supported his other side. Clara steadied his staggering weight, guiding him toward the house. Easy, easy, she murmured, her breath fogging the freezing air. Elias's legs nearly buckled twice, but the children refused to let him fall. Papa, hold on. You're home now. We got you. Inside, the warmth hit him like a wave. Clara eased him into the armchair closest to the fire while Emma quickly fetched blankets. Jonah rushed for water. Caleb clung to his father's leg as if afraid the storm would snatch him back again. Clara knelt in front of Elias, snow melting in her hair and dripping onto her lashes. She pressed the back of her hand to his forehead, burning hot. He's fevered, she whispered. Elias coughed, voice rasped raw. I'm all right, just cold, too cold. But his shivering told another story. Noah knelt beside him, helplessness stamped across his young face. "Papa, why didn't you stay in town? Why'd you come in this storm?" Elias looked at his children, really looked, as though memorizing them. "Because," he whispered, "I needed to get home before Christmas. I promised your mama I'd keep this family together." And his gaze drifted to Clara. "You were waiting." Clara swallowed. Something in her chest tightened and softened all at once. Through the night, the children refused to leave their father's side. Clara brewed willow bark tea, wiped the sweat from Elias's brow, and kept the fire blazing through the night. Emma stayed near Elias, whispering soft prayers. Jonah watched the windows, guarding the house like a little sentinel. Caleb fell asleep holding Elias's hand. Ellie curled up beside Clara, trembling less each hour. Elias drifted in and out of consciousness, murmuring the children's names, and sometimes Clara's. The storm outside quieted. The storm inside slowly calmed. As dawn crept in, soft pink light brushing across the snowy yard, Clara felt Elias's fever begin to break. She touched his cheek. "Cooler. Thank God, cooler. You're going to be all right," she whispered. His eyes fluttered open, clearer than they'd been in hours. "Clara?" His voice was rough but present. "How long have you stayed?" "All night," she said gently. "Your children needed you." He blinked slowly. "And you?" Her breath caught. "I promised them I wouldn't leave." A faint smile tugged at his lips, the first she'd seen. "You kept your word," he whispered. The Christmas morning that changed everything. By the time the sun rose fully, the children were buzzing around with renewed hope. The blizzard had passed. The world outside glowed white and peaceful. And it was Christmas. Emma prepared a simple breakfast. Jonah brought in firewood like the walls depended on him. Noah helped Elias sit up with pillows. Caleb and Ellie placed their handmade gifts at their father's feet. Elias's voice shook as he opened each one. A wooden horse Jonah carved. A knitted square Emma worked on for weeks. A paper snowflake Ellie folded carefully. A pebble Caleb found because it reminded him of Papa, strong. Each gift seemed to stitch Elias's heart back together. Then the children brought one final gift, something wrapped in an old flour sack tied with twine. "What's this?" Elias asked. Emma looked shy. "It's from all of us. For you. And Miss Clara." Clara blinked. "For me?" Emma nodded and motioned for him to open it. Inside was a wooden plaque, roughly carved but full of love. Words burned into the wood in shaky lines. "The Holt family, Christmas begins again." Clara's throat closed. Elias's eyes filled. "You all made this?" he whispered. "We wanted you to know," Noah said, brushing tears away. "We're still a family. And we want Miss Clara to stay." Clara froze. Emma stepped forward, trembling but determined. "We made room for her at the table days ago." "The chair next to yours?" "We saved it." Clara looked toward the table. Sure enough, a chair had been placed there all along. Not by accident. Not by necessity. But by hope. Elias looked at Clara, truly seeing her, tired, brave, gentle, steady, and already folded into his children's hearts. "Clara," he said softly, "I never meant to mislead you. I wrote to the agency because I needed someone kind. Someone who could help my children heal. I didn't expect." His eyes softened. "I didn't expect you." Clara's eyes shimmered. "I didn't expect any of this either," she whispered. "But you stayed," he said. Clara nodded. "They asked me to. And he hesitated, humbled. "I'm asking to. Not as a man desperate, but as a father who sees what you are to them already. As a man who's grateful you came." The children held their breath. Elias reached for her hand. "Will you stay a while longer?" "No pressure. No vows. Just stay. Let this family grow into you." Clara's voice broke before she could contain it. "Yes," she whispered. "I'll stay." The children erupted, laughing, crying, hugging her so tight she nearly lost her balance. Elias exhaled, relief softening his whole frame. The storm had brought her here. Love would keep her. A Christmas table with no empty seats. That evening they lit candles across the house. Hung the last ornament on the tree, Mama Holt's angel. Served dinner with gingerbread table guards at every plate. Then they all sat. Emma next to Ellie. Noah next to Jonah. Caleb between Clara and his father. And Clara. In the chair the children had saved for her. Elias raised his cup. "To new beginnings," he said. Clara raised hers, voice warm and sure. "To coming home when you never expected to." The children clinked their cups too, each one whispering a tiny amen. And for the first time since their mother died, the Holt home felt whole again. It wasn't the perfect Christmas they had planned. It was better. Because every heart at that table had chosen to be there. Together. A family stitched from storms, hope, courage. And the love of a mail-order bride who walked into the unknown. And found her place waiting for her at the table.